And I include within that sex life, which doesn't get discussed enough. But, at the age of, when I was 30, I never thought people at 60 had sex.
Mm.
When you reach 60, you probably, as I am now, I realise that my sex life is as important to me as ever, and it's very much a vibrant part. And I want to get to 90 and still feel the same.
Mm.
So what I'm talking about is a fully functional life, the ability to do exactly the same stuff, and to have a complete relationship, and to, what does it say, to die young at a very old age, full functional.
Mm.
And I think that's entirely possible.
Mm.
And I think there's a whole new concept around aging, which perhaps we'll get into.
Mm. So how do we go about that? What are your kind of pillars of going about that? We talk about, start with diet, because I think it's the first point of commonality that we have, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'd like to start a little bit further back, if I may.
Go for it.
Is this?
Mm.
What's the oldest a man has ever fathered a child, do you reckon?
Now, are we talking Peter Stringfellow? Are we talking? I don't know.
Technically, men can go on fathering children.
Yeah,
It's happened, I think, into their 90s.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And what's the oldest a woman has ever naturally conceived? In her maybe 50s, mid 50s? It's acceptable that it happens.
Potentially, yeah.
So their combined age is 140,
Mm.
but the baby comes out brand new. So somewhere inside us is the elixir of youth. And the journey is a bit like this. If you go back 30, 40 years, cancer was seen as an inevitable and random process about which you could do nothing, and once you got it, you were going to die. And these days, the majority of people live with cancer just like they live with all the other long-term conditions. It ultimately isn't the cause of their death in more than 50% of people. Now, 40, 50 years ago, we'd all said nothing you can do about cancer, we'd have achieved nothing over that period. And there's a whole new concept of aging, which is aging as a disease rather than an inevitable consequence. And just to give a couple of other random examples, there's a tree that lives to 5,000 years old with no obvious signs of aging. And there's a whale that they found in the bottom of the ocean that's aged 500 and it's not obviously aging. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that in all of biology, aging doesn't appear to be totally inevitable.
Mm.
And it also tells us that a mammal, and we're not a million miles away from a whale, can live to a tremendous age. So if you understood the process of aging and regard it as a disease process rather than some inevitable thing, what's out there? And what's out there might be potentially a life expectancy, a healthy, quality, vibrant life expectancy of 150 years. So that's what it. Now I'm 60. That means I'm only half done. I kind of quite fancy that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So if you start to understand the aging processes, you can then start to think about, okay, what things are going to enhance the rate of aging, and what things can I do that are going to reduce the rate of aging? And the example I would probably pick first is cardiometabolic disease, and in particular type 2 diabetes. Because in many ways you could say diabetes is premature aging. You can look at it in many different ways, but that's one way to look at it. And if you look at the things that contribute to diabetes, what are they? Well, overwhelmingly diet, and then things like stress, poor sleep, and a lack of exercise. All of the things that will go up to make my program, and I'm sure your program.
Yeah.
So then you might say, okay, well, let's look a bit more into the science. So of longevity, what's the contribution of your genes, and what's the contribution of everything else? In other words, are your genes your destiny?
Yeah.
And it turns out they're not. So although your genes might load the gun, it's your lifestyle that fires it. And healthy longevity is probably 80% lifestyle. How empowering is that?